COVID-19 pandemic is, of course, causing a great deal of fear, worry, and anxiety among people. Now, the difficulties brought about by restrictions under a quarantine can be very stressful. But behind the difficulties, there are stories that inspire the people to be strong. With the scheduled extension of the ECQ until the end of the month, how long can people hold it together? And what can people do to cope with the stress? We discussed this in this episode of The Chiefs. Welcome to this special episode of The Chiefs. Now, joining us in our discussion is Dr. Violeta Bautista of the UP Diliman Psychological Services, or I think you're called Psych Serve. Did I get it right, ma'am?
Yes, and it's
Yes, ma'am. And yes, thank you for joining us. And Matthew Perez, he is a writer who decided to volunteer as a delivery man. I think Matthew's coming online. Okay, let's wait a bit for Matthew. And of course, with us as well is Dr. Raul Destura. Of course, everybody I'm sure knows him by now. He's from the Philippine Genome Center. He's also with the National Institutes of Health. He was the man behind the COVID-19 rapid testing kit that was recently approved by the FDA. So we have Dr. Bautista over there to tell us how to cope with all the stresses. We have Dr. Destura there, who I suppose now has a new set of stresses now that he has to produce all these kits. But at the same time, I think I think you're way over a hump at this point with the approval of the FDA. So I think that's supposed to be good news. But Dr. Bautista, let me start off with you. Can you give us a profile of no, before the profile, exactly what kind of services is PsychServe offering to anybody who is feeling anxious because of what's happening now?
Well, because of physical distancing, we can simply connect through telephone, online platform, and landlines. So we're
Mhm,
providing free telepsychotherapy.
mhm,
So callers can log into the internet, our site, or they could
mhm,
straight dial to our cell phone. And we
mhm, mhm,
provide listening ear and see what the clients need and provide appropriate therapy, counseling, or coaching.
mhm. So that stereotyped image of the couch in psychotherapy is not going to apply anymore. Not at least not now.
Uh,
Not for the next 2 months.
yeah, and we don't use the couch anymore. That's classic analysis.
Stereotype talaga. Well, but of course, without going into too much detail, because of course we have privacy issues. Can you give us an
Okay.
idea of the profile of those who reach out to seek help from PsychServe?
Basically, many of them would be individuals who are destabilized and worried, anxious about what's happening. The big percent are
Mhm,
people who are normal, but they worry whether they are already psychologically disturbed because they are experiencing a wide range of intense emotions. So the question is, ano ba nangyayari sa akin? Am I going crazy?
mhm,
Then you have to tell them, no, basically what you're experiencing are seemingly abnormal reactions, but are not
mhm,
reactions to abnormal situation.
mhm,
Many of the callers belong to that category. And then of course you have frontliners who are overwhelmed, stressed by what they have to deal with, and people who are working from home and trying to put
mhm,
their life together, get adjusted to the new normal. Yeah. And then, of course, we
mhm,
have the students, faculty of our university, because PsychServe primarily was established to address the needs of students, faculty, and staff of the University of the Philippines. That was
mhm,
2 or 3 years ago when there was
mhm,
an incidence of psychological problems. But when the COVID problem surfaced, then we reorganized our services to be more relevant, not only
Yes,
to
ma'am.
the community, but to the whole public already.
Yes, ma'am. But Dr. Bautista, I can imagine that it does put you in a quandary of sorts because the people you seek to serve are going through the kinds of stresses that you as well are going through right now because you are also under quarantine. You are also going through all these stresses of this anxiousness of COVID and quarantine. What's it like for you?
Well, we are basically trained to manage our stressors, so we could be aware of what's going on within ourselves, take care of ourselves, and then of course we also have a community of health providers, so we call on each other. But basically, we could be present to our callers, even though there are times we also have our own challenges.
Mm-hmm. Now let me segue to Dr. Raul Destura over there. Dr. Destura, how are you? And how is your COVID testing kit? And are you feeling the stresses of the production, or is it much better now?
Well, we are now on the next phase of Calvary, wherein you have to do the manufacturing for the needs of the country. So right now we are using this as our sacrifice and offering this holy. Um, all of us has to work over time to make sure that we get to release all of the technology the soonest time possible for the country. So
Mhm.
we are rolling out to the testing centers that the Department of Science and Technology has identified for us to do the initial implementation of the technology in the field, and
Mhm.
we're hoping that uh, my team will be safe in traveling and they don't get infected along the way, and at the same time they will have safe travels going back and forth to target areas in Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao.
Mhm. But Dr.
So
Destura,
yeah.
can you give us some numbers there? How many kits are you going to be able to produce per day or per week or per month and so on down the line? Oh, let me also welcome Ami Pamintuan, the editor in chief of the Philippine Star. Ami's over there. Hi, Ami.
Hi, Ami.
Hi, good evening. Sorry ha, napakahirap talaga mag-connect ngayong panahon.
Okay lang
Kako-connect
yan.
ko lang ngayon. Sorry.
Medyo
Good evening to all of
unusual
you.
times eh.
And to
Oh.
our,
Pero Ami,
yeah,
let me also welcome na rin si
ano,
Matthew. Matthew Perez is over there. Matthew is also one of our guests. Ami, of
yes,
course, is one
yes,
of our hosts.
Malwalker, yes,
She's my co-host.
yes. Hi,
Si
hi.
Matthew is also one of our guests. Si Matthew is a writer for Philippines Graphic. I'm a friend of Joel Salud.
Oo
And
nga.
si Matthew has an interesting story. But Matthew, we'll get to you in a while. Let me first finish off with Dr. Destura. Ami, do you wanna throw a question to Dr. Destura or shall I continue?
Hindi ko kasi narinig yung previous question niya. I think everyone just wants to know kung kailan mag-uumpisa yung testing using their kits. Pero kung
Yun.
nasagot ko na yan, it's okay.
Can you repeat? It's
Well, Doc, I think what Ami is simply saying is that give us an update dun sa testing kits
Oo.
po
Dun
ninyo.
sa
What do we expect in the next few weeks or next few days in terms of
kasi
numbers?
everyone
okay.
is
So
excited
we're
about it, no?
currently ramping up our manufacturing, and we're hoping to be able to produce uh, 8,000 tests per day. No, and then hopefully once the expansion manufacturing is opened in 10 days, we will be able to double the manufacturing capacity after that. No? So when you say 8,000 tests per day, that's 320 kits a day because one kit is 25 reactions.
Mhm.
So so that's why when I use the word 8,000 tests per day, para it's easier to
Mhm.
understand that
Mas
test to one
tangible.
person.
Mhm.
To one person.
Ito po yung test po, no? Hindi to persons, no? Tests. Kasi a person can have several
Yes.
tests.
Yeah,
So
so
after April
8,000
14, no?
tests per day. If you convert that into kits, that's 320 kits a day.
Wow.
Si Ami may tanong.
Because one kit has 25. Yeah.
So, after April 14, roll out na yan? After April 14 ba? We were expecting it after April 14. And sino yung bibili pala? Sino yung magbabayad? DOH ba? Or, I understand one of your first clients will be the Marikina government. Saan ba yung manggagaling yung first orders of your kits? Dr. Destura.
I didn't get the question because the signal is breaking apart.
Did
you get it, Ed? Can you?
Sige.
I'll translate.
It's like it sounded like
Bisaya ako.
Doc,
I think Ami was asking kung ano po sino po yung first beneficiaries ng kit kasi she understands na Marikina is one of the first beneficiaries of the kits. Tapos originally po I think April 14 dapat yung yung rollout pero I think napaaga pa ata yung rollout ng kits niyo eh. So give us some info there.
So the rollout program is to the identified subnational laboratories of the Department of Health, as identified as well by the Department of Science and Technology. We are preparing for the field rollout implementation. We're trying to do it earlier than the targeted 14, April 14. So, but because if we can finish it earlier, then we will be able to serve more people. So, but we do not want naman to compromise our manufacturing. So it's a balancing act between the two. So, but we're praying that we can do it a little earlier than we are targeting. So let's see how it goes. So currently we are putting together our manufacturing pipeline, and hopefully we get to roll out next week.
Oh, next week. That sounds good. And these are PCR kits, diba, Doc? These are polymerase chain reaction kits.
These are PCR kits already.
Yeah. Ito yung talagang reliable at ito yung talagang actually ito yung gagamitin pa para i-confirmatory test yung mga rapid reaction o yung mga rapid testing kits.
The rapid kits they are a different platform, and I think certain research groups now are studying on how it can be used properly in this situation, and I am rooting for them as well to be able to identify the best timing for these technologies to be used for our country, and how it can best serve the purpose of the tests.
Ami, doctors, if you don't mind, I'll segue to Matthew Perez over there. Si Matthew, kakaiba yung kwento dito eh. Ami, I'll toss it to you. Baka you want to introduce Matthew Perez and tell us what's up with him.
Okay, Matthew, you have a very interesting story. You're a writer and now you're volunteering to deliver stuff. Maybe you can tell us kung ano nangyari and a bit of your background. Kung bakit naging interesado ka sa ganitong service to the public. Baka kailangan mo mag-translate ulit, Ed.
Ako rin, di ko rin marinig eh. Teka, nakakatawa, ginagawa niyo akong translator eh. They'll fix muna, no? I'm sure they'll fix muna Matthew sa audio levels dun sa studio. Let's go back to the doctors. Anyway, but see Matthew, we can park Matthew for a while later. Para, good news yung ating good news yung ating ending. Sige. Si Dr. Bautista and Dr. Destura are still with us. Sige, Bok, ikaw.
Sige, Dr. Bautista, we've had a report of at least one person committing suicide because of problems related to this pandemic. I don't think that's very unusual, yung ganyang depression. Even our president is complaining about this. Medyo despairing na yung message na the last time eh. Ano ba yung masasabi niyo sa mga tao natin at this point?
Well, the pandemic is a very unusual, unprecedented, and emotionally destabilizing experience. So it's not surprising that there would be people who would be experiencing fear, anxiety, loneliness, and even depression. But most of our people, when they experience this, I'd like to assure you that these are basically normal reactions to unusual.
Oop, I think we're having problems
Nawala rin.
from Dr. Bautista's side.
Oo.
Yeah, mukhang nag si Dr. Bautista. Sige, we'll go back to Dr. Bautista in a while. Bigla nawala si Matthew at si Dr. Bautista. Matthew's back. Can you hear us, Matthew?
Yes,
Okay.
hi. Yes,
Baka
Yun.
masagot
Oh,
na
sige, sige.
hear me.
Baka masagot, ano yung nangyari from writer to a volunteer, a delivery person? Anong nangyari?
Yes.
What went into the transformation?
Well, I thought about what will happen, especially now that there is a lockdown. I am driving. I'm a delivery guy for Lalamove, if you guys are familiar with the app. And I also deliver on the side when people are asking me to bring in donations to various hospitals.
Was there any particular event that triggered it, or did you have any someone you know inspired you to do this thing?
Well, I have a very close friend who was infected with COVID-19. He was brought to the ICU in Makati Medical Center. He was intubated. And the one thing that particularly concerns me is our medical frontliners are falling. They're falling ill. And I was thinking there has to be something I can do. So I signed up for Lala Move and I became a delivery boy I dove into this head first at the height of lockdown. Just to be of service to people who need it the most, particularly the most vulnerable.
What's the reaction of the people to you doing what you're doing now?
Well, it depends. On social media, I am gaining traction, but people around me are a bit afraid because of the hospitals to which I go. I go to GH, I go to RITM, the Medical City, Long Center. People around me are afraid that I might bring the virus home.
You're not worried about
So the people around are quite worried that I might bring the virus home.
Oh my
So um, they don't really say it directly, but you can tell that there is fear. And sometimes when they ask, which hospitals do you go to? Have you tried visiting this place? Which hospital did you go to last? And I said the last hospital to which I went was PGH. And the answer was, naku po. And some of them, I understand their apprehension for having me as a neighbor right now. I totally
oh
understand.
dear.
But Matthew, I'm certain Joel Saludore told you this. When this is all over and done with, you have a pretty good story on your hands.
Yeah.
You have something to write about.
Yes, I do. Actually, I've been chronicling this on Facebook every day with hashtag Delivery Boy Diary. I post stories here and there to inspire people to also help out others. If they have donations to give, PPEs, packed meals, anything that we can donate to our medical frontliners, it would really be appreciated. Because everybody's running out of supplies. As a matter of fact, on a personal level, with the help of a friend and an organization to which she's connected, I donated 400 surgical bufon caps, 200 powderless gloves, and more than 200 reusable masks to Quezon Memorial Medical Center.
Dr. Bautista, balik na ba na Dr. Bautista?
Yeah, Dr. Bautista is back.
Yeah, of course, stories like this are helping people, ano. Pero kung within the family, halimbawa, someone in the family is showing stress, what can the members do and what should people watch out for?
families need to be open to each other and not be afraid to share what's going on in their individual lives. Now, interestingly, uh, family members are not used to being together for a long period of time. So what
Mm.
happens is family members tend to step on each other's toes. Incidents of conflict, quarrels tend to increase. And so families need to be able to practice empathy so that they understand what the other person is going through. The thing is to ask, why is my husband or my child getting more irritable than usual? Why is she getting angry? So we put ourselves in their position, and then we also within our family we need to practice compassion, be more kind,
Mm.
and it helps when family members are able to do things together. So when you do that, you become more comfortable to each other, and it's also good to normalize, okay? Normalize what's going on in the family and not always be judgmental about people's reactions. This is overwhelming and uncomfortable situation. Then family members should be able to say, let's try to make the best out of it, okay? So,
Mm.
but
Mm.
the thing is, from the story of one of our guests, it's good to see that at the same time that people are experiencing anxiety, tension, conflicts, there are also stories of positivity, uh, people helping one another. I think when we hear stories like this, we are inspired, we become hopeful, and that gives us the energy to be able to go on from day to day and cope.
Mhm. Dr. Bautista, we're almost out of time. Can you tell us how people can get in touch with you if they need help?
Okay, uh, please do call us up in our telephone number. Uh, I think I sent you our publicity material. You could
Mhm.
also log into our website so that we could immediately respond to your needs. Um,
Mhm.
we have clinical psychologists, counselors, and
Mhm.
mental health workers to attend to you. Wag ho kayong mahiya. We are there to support you and provide assistance.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Bautista. Dr. Destura, she was just talking about positivity. Yours is an example of something very, very positive. But before anything else, can we ask you, your opinion about mass testing? They've been talking about doing mass testing beginning the 14th of April, but only limited to PUIs and PUMs. As somebody, as a microbiologist, as a specialist in this field, do you see the need to expand it further to include other people outside the PUI PUM community?
Well, at best scenario, if we have enough supply of testing, that can be a good approach. But in situations like resources are limited and availability of testing equipments and facilities are also a little bit on the limited side as well. The second best approach is the targeted massive
Mm-hmm.
testing. Pag sinabing targeted pa din siya pero massive, ibig sabihin from the index case to the contact tracing is the logical approach at this time. There are several initiatives that are being put together at this time to save on the cost of mass testing and yet still cover both the asymptomatics and the symptomatic
Mm-hmm.
ones and contacts. I think it's being called as pooled testing. It's being studied all over the world, and a lot of benefits can also come from that if you have resource issue. No?
Mm-hmm.
It's probably something that's being studied already by our local team of epidemiologists and experts on how it can best be utilized in situations like we have limitations in resources. So, kumbaga that's the middle point, no? between
Yeah.
a symptom-based testing and an all-out mass testing all over the place. No? So
Mhm.
that can be the middle point wherein people can design what we call an epidemiological modeling on how it can best approximate the estimates of exposure in that particular community to assist government in a scientific way of relaxing some of the quarantined areas in the country to allow some form of business to operate so as not to hurt significantly the country's economy.
Mhm.
So it's a lot of balancing act between several agencies, and I know it's going to be a very challenging thing to do for most of these departments and agencies in the country. And the best way we can actually support them is to provide as much evidence data as possible. Unfortunately, some of the interventions may not even be backed by hard evidence because you don't get epidemic every day.
Mhm.
So some is best reserved on logical scientific thinking on what would be the expected what are the expectations if you do this particular intervention and how it will impact your decision making. If it's not going to change the way we decide in things, then that's probably not the options you are going through. So these are some of the gray areas between symptom based testing and the other end of the spectrum, test everyone. So that's the middle point.
Dr.
Okay.
Destura,
Yeah.
Dr. Destura, pahabol lang. Anong interventions yung sinasabi nyo na might not be useful? Can you be more specific? Ano-ano yung intervention na yon? Some of them, sabi nyo, might not be necessary or might not be achieving the results intended. Ano yan?
May I ask Ed to translate again?
Doc, ano raw yung sinasabi din yung some interventions might not have the intended result. What exactly were you referring to?
Some of the results may.
Some of the
Sorry.
interventions.
Some interventions. Some
Yeah,
interventions
yeah. So,
may not be necessary or ano.
May not be
interventions
necessary.
in terms of mass testing. Sorry, I didn't get the question right.
Yes, in terms of mass testing, I think.
Yeah. So the for example in Singapore, when you do mass testing, there is a positivity rate of about Singapore. I'm sorry, in Korea, there is a positivity rate of about 2% among asymptomatic individuals. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
sir. Yes, Doc. Yes, Doc.
Okay.
Go ahead.
There was this word sound that came out. So, so the 2% positivity rate among asymptomatics and the 98% negative among asymptomatic. What is the economic value of the 98% negative that the country will spend for? Is it the same? Is that cost acceptable to the Philippine situation? That's why to be able for you to do that kind of testing, massive testing, it has something to do with the resources needed and the money spent in order to cover a mass testing program, and how the result of this data will affect the intervention as a whole. So the situations in the Philippines and in Korea, although it's the same virus, but the environment, economic status, situation, and all of the interventions available are a little bit different in the two scenarios. So sometimes interventions such like that may apply to one country but not to the other. So in a country like ours, we have problems in both resources and at the same time access to testing all over the country. The best way is the question that we have to answer ourselves is, with the kind of resources that we have, how can we best utilize is to still achieve the endpoint that you want in the end. That's why I think the approach that the government is doing is the targeted, massive, however it's defined, no, testing. It's like giving it the best we could in terms of the availability of resources at hand. And I still think
Mhm.
it's a sound intervention. It may not be perfect, but This is where other interventions and assessment will come in. Beyond the testing, it's not the end all and be all in making decisions related to relaxing lockdowns and all of the other factors involved. It can just be one of those things. When you add several factors together, you can still have an intelligible decision that is logical and applicable to our situation. Sometimes we wish for things that we don't have,
Mhm.
that we miss
Mhm.
already the things that we can actually access to make good decisions around us. And testing
Okay.
is just one of them. Yeah.
Okay. So allow me to say thank you to our guests, Dr. Destura and Dr. Bautista. Thank you for joining us. Let us just
Pwede
segue to...
pahabol ang telephone
yes, ma'am.
number.
Yes, ma'am.
Sir.
Yes, ma'am. Sige po. Sige po.
Okay. So for those who would like to connect with us, please dial 0906374346. You could also find us at Facebook. Our name is UPD Psych Serve.
PsychServe on Facebook. Mas madali po hanapin usually sa Facebook eh. Maraming
Oo.
salamat po, doctors. Before we go, we'd like to ask Matthew for any message that he would want to give to people out there, people who feel helpless. Because Matthew is a good example of somebody who if you feel helpless, you do something about it. And I think that's a common denominator for all our guests tonight. People who stood up and said, "Na this is something where we need to act." Matthew.
Well, the one thing I'm going to tell people is if you guys have anything to donate, contact people who are consolidating donations. This is a very big help to everybody, not just our medical frontliners, but people in our city, people in our country who are the most vulnerable, the urban poor, the ones with less income. If you wish to donate anything, get in touch with any local charities or friends who are consolidating donations. And of course, guys, please, we are on lockdown, we are on quarantine. Please stay home. Try to minimize exposure so that you don't get infected. And the sooner we can flatten the curve, the better off we will all be.
Okay.
I
I
suppose
guess
that's
that's it.
all I can say. Yes.
Ami, may pahabol ka, Ami.
Okay na yun. Very uplifting messages at least. Going into
Maraming
the...
salamat to our salamat to our three guests. Ayun nga, we have a common denominator for our three guests. It's looking for the ray of sunshine and working for the ray of sunshine in what would have otherwise been a sea of despair. Maraming salamat po, Dr. Violeta Bautista, Dr. Raul Destura, and of course Matthew, our colleague in the media, Matthew Pirante Perez, who now is, I suppose, driving a tricycle, a motorcycle. Matthew, maraming salamat for what you're doing. Dr. Raul and Dr. Violeta, maraming salamat for what you're doing.
Thank you too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
That
so
will be
much
all for
having
this edition of The Cheese. We hope to discuss here. We'll keep the conversation going. I'm Ed Lingao, One News.
I'm Ami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star, and we are One News. Okay.